Good morning and welcome to Bike Hour, our first ever event for Western Libraries, offered in collaboration with London Bike Cafe and London Public Library. My name is Katia Peryasowska, and I am the User Experience Librarian for Student Engagement and Outreach at Western Libraries. Western University is located on the traditional territories of the Chonnonton, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Lenape nations, connected through the London and Sombra Township treaties, and to the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Wampum. Here we are on borrowed land, working towards decolonizing the university with the aim of creating a more inclusive and flourishing campus by taking deliberate and intentional actions to disassemble settler colonial structures. A part of disassembling settler colonial structures is about reversing the significant damage which settlers inflict on this land, and through over-industrialization and introduction of and heavy reliance on automotive transport. Cycling is a great way for individuals and communities to reduce emission and choose a healthy, sustainable mode of transportation while making commute to work or study fun and enjoyable, unless it's raining sideways, in which case it's at the very least memorable. In its new strategic plan towards Western 150, the university made a clear commitment to creating and sustaining a safer, more pedestrian and bicycle-friendly, biodiverse campus, with the aim of achieving net zero emissions for campus operations by 2050 and prioritizing retrofitting existing buildings with energy-saving technology. Western has pledged to engage with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which include climate action and building sustainable communities among its 7 global priorities. Western Libraries is interested in defining our contributions to support of these goals by facilitating conversations such as this one to bring our cycling community together, our students, faculty, and staff, to talk about bikes on and off campus, as well as good reads about bikes. We have 3 speakers today, which in order of presenters include Mike McLean, who is the Director of Facilities Planning and Design at Western University Facilities Management. We've got Nadia Petrosinas, Assistant Manager, London Bicycle Cafe, Southwestern Ontario Citizen Cyclery. And last but not least, Ashley Hickey, Outreach Librarian at London Public Library, working from the Central Library branch. I will hand over the mic to Mike, who will give us a quick overview of key things we need to know about bikes on campus. And due to scheduling limitations, I also want to know that we'll take quick questions after his presentation before moving on to our next presenter.
Thanks very much, Katya, and hello, everyone. Good morning. In my capacity, as it says here, as Director of Facilities Planning and Design at Western, the area that I work in gets involved in all design and construction on campus, including not just buildings, but the space in between buildings as well. And as Katya mentioned, we do have a priority to develop a safer campus for both pedestrians and cyclists. And it's really the work of the open space strategy that has identified our priorities in that area. And it's something that I've been involved with from the outset, and I will touch on that a little bit as well. I think first what I wanted to share is some of the bike parking and storage options that are currently on campus, primarily looked after by Parking and Visitor Services, an area which I don't work in, but is part of facilities management. We certainly know that on campus there are numerous covered and uncovered bike racks across the campus. We also know that they're not necessarily the safest or most secure options for locking up your bikes. In fact, it was a few years ago now that Western Special Constable Service, or formerly Campus Police, as part of an anti-theft initiative, looked at the campus and identified low density, high risk locations where we had bike racks, and we in turn relocated a number of those bikes to different locations that are more high profile. In addition to the bike racks, we do have bike lockers on campus, and those are available through parking services, as I mentioned. We have bike lockers at Concrete Beach, the UCC, at the Health Sciences Building, and behind the Support Services Building as well. They're very popular. However, I know that Parking Services finds that they are fairly high maintenance. They are subject to damage and do have to be repaired on a regular basis. But those are certainly an option and a safer, more secure option than the bike racks. More recently, we built a covered secure bike shelter on campus in the Alumni Thompson parking lot. It accommodates 60 bikes in total. And of course that opened up during COVID. So the uptake on it initially was fairly slow, but I do know that permits have been taken for access to that bike shelter, and all those 60 racks have been accounted for most recently. The security comes from the fact that it is truly a covered bike shelter, glazed on all sides. So there's lots of visibility, and in adjacent to a busy area of the campus as well. Access is provided once you get your permit for the bike shelter with your Western One card. It is just like accessing any building with your Western One card. And it has proven quite successful. I also wanted to mention that the sustainability website, sustainability.uwo.ca, has information on campus cycling resources, including a bike and shower map that is due for an update, but it does identify all the locations for various bike lockers and bike racks on campus, as well as indicating which buildings have public showers. For example, a campus rec would be one location, and there are a number of buildings on campus where those showers are available. I mentioned campus police, and they, from a bike protection standpoint, have partnered up with the London Police Service to support a community-based crime prevention strategy called 529 Garage. And with that, Western has purchased a number of tamper-resistant 529 shields, as they're called, that are provided to Western faculty, staff, and students that register a bike with them. I believe that program is still in place, and it certainly is with the City of London. And some of my colleagues here today might know more about that than I do. I mentioned the open space strategy in particular, and we have undertaken some initiatives in the past few years, specifically related to active transportation and cycling in particular. One example that comes to mind is the separated bidirectional bike lane that we have adjacent to the Social Science Building on Elgin Drive. Anyone that does cycle to campus may have noticed last year that one of the routes that really truly wasn't in good shape as far as the asphalt goes was closed for construction. And that is not that we all know the names of streets on campus, but it is a portion of Kent Drive that runs from Oxford Drive past the front entrance to Macintosh Gallery and all the way down to Physics and Astronomy. That has now been pedestrianized with plaza in front of Macintosh Gallery and a rain garden at the main entrance to Physics and Astronomy. It is certainly available to cyclists now as well, and glad to see that that's reopened. We continue to do more work, and because of the success of the bike shelter at Alumni Thompson, which is more in the south area of campus, we've identified a location in the north end of campus where we will locate our next bike shelter, and it's in the general area of the Middlesex parking lot. Exact location to be determined, but for this bike shelter, we're planning on accommodating 100 bikes. And our learning from doing the first one at Alumni Thompson is that we should consider accommodating all types of bikes, including cargo bikes. So we're looking at that as well. That'll be something that will probably be operational within the next year. ongoing work. I mentioned the open space strategy. The work that we're doing this summer, next summer, will not be as disruptive to cycling on campus, in that we're focusing on pedestrian walkways on UC Hill and on the west side of Music Building and Talbot College. The other thing that I did want to mention is some work that the City of London is doing by way of an EA at the intersection of Richmond and Windermere. That will result in road improvements at that intersection, and the city is planning on making an active transportation connection from the intersection of Richmond and Windermere south on Richmond to the Thames Valley Parkway. So not only are we looking at improvements in the on campus, the City of London is looking at improvements to the cycling network in and around the campus as well. I will wrap it up there, and as Katja mentioned, certainly would entertain any questions.
Thank you so much for this overview, Mike. My one question is with regard to trails. Perhaps that's a good one to raise. Nadia and I were talking about the new location for the London Bike Cafe that's going to be opening closer to the university. And it got me thinking about like taking advantage more of the wonderful trails that are around Western campus and maybe creating some pathways and connections there. I don't know how much control or oversight the campus has over some of those areas, but I just wanted to put it out there as kind of a question.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. Certainly we have the Thames Valley Parkway, the City of London Thames Valley Parkway, that does run through a portion of the campus, in fact. Not many people are aware, but as you come out of Gibbons Park at the north end, a portion of the Thames Valley Parkway is actually on Western properties before it spills onto city streets. And of course, when you come underneath the bridge on University Drive and go north, there's a portion of the parkway that's on Western property as well. I think that is the primary pathway that I think of in and around campus. And the benefit we have there is that most recently the city completed that north connection that gets you all the way through to Adelaide Street now. Other informal pathways are something that we don't necessarily maintain specifically for cycling, but I would point out that the open space strategy does talk about strong desire to connect to the river. And that's something that that we're looking at as well as we do work in various areas of campus.
Thank you for that. I see there's a question hand up from Christopher. Go ahead, Christopher.
Hi, Mike. Thank you for your talk. You mentioned that the bike lockers on campus are subject to damage. I'm on the wait list for them. Is the damage caused by people trying to break into them?
Not necessarily, and not that I'm aware of anyway. What Parking Services has found is that if there's anything that bumps into the outside of the side panels, they're just held in by rivets. They're in need of almost constant repair. It doesn't take much to damage those.
Okay, thank you. Then the other question I had was, I'm currently parking my bike in the covered bike garage. Are you aware of have bikes ever been stolen from there before, or is it it's probably the safest option on campus right now?
Yes, it is, and I'm not aware of any bikes being stolen from there, but I'd have to check with Western Special Constable Service to see if there has in fact been any theft from that location.
Thank you.
I should also mention that Western does have a policy on bikes in buildings that doesn't permit people to bring their bikes within buildings to secure them or store them. We know that that's sometimes not enforced really strictly, but our concern primarily is from the building services standpoint and just having to clean up after bikes and especially from a dirt standpoint. But more importantly, I think more often than not, we see bikes being stored in stairwells, which are fire exits in and of themselves, and fire safety, and certainly City of London Fire really frown upon bikes being stored in those locations. So we have to be aware of that. Having said that, there are a couple of buildings in particular that I'm aware of that do have some indoor storage. And in fact, the most recent location is a storage area that's been identified. I don't believe it's in place yet, but it's been identified in Thames Hall. That will be a location where some bikes will be able to be stored. And I anticipate if that does go forward, it will be managed by parking services, just like the bike shelters are.
That sounds terrific, Mike. Thank you for sharing that with us. Nadia, go ahead.
I just was curious if you folks had opinions about folding bikes inside of buildings. Things like the Brompton fit under a desk. The turn links fold up as well. They're a bit bigger, but you could still, store them safely out of the way, and you certainly wouldn't be tempted to leave them in a stairwell because they're I don't know, they're fold up, they're compact, you can carry them in one hand. Do you guys see anybody doing that on campus? Do you find that's okay to bring those inside? They're a little, I don't know if they're sort of easier. They're more city bikes. They're not meant for being on the roads. They shouldn't be dirty from like trails, that kind of thing.
Right. I do have a colleague actually in my area that does ride a folding bike and brings it in and sets it on a mat so that it's not getting right onto the floor.
Yeah, works.
Our policy doesn't drill down that deep into the type of bike that shouldn't come into a campus. But certainly that's something that I see. He hasn't been asked to take his bike and put it outside. So as I say, it's not a policy that is strictly enforced. I know there are a number of faculty, in fact, that will bring their bikes into their office. Probably because their offices are a little bit on the larger side and can accommodate a bike. But again, it's not only dust and dirt that will have to be cleaned up, with the exception of folding bikes. Moving them in and around and through buildings can end up in damage to doors and walls as well.
I feel like too, Mike, I think this policies with regard to like what's reasonable, and because we're talking about like maybe not as many of us yet having folding bikes. I have a Brompton, so does my partner, but I think there's only been a handful of times that we've brought it into work really a few years ago. So maybe that's something that could be looked at again. Also, as you're considering like new storage spaces, maybe there could be more compact spaces like locker type, like oversized mail locker type, where you could just pop in a folding bike. You definitely create more of those, and then maybe create extra spaces for cargo bikes that way.
Yeah, as a cyclist myself, I know I've had occasion to bring my bike into the building I work in when I forget the key to my locker, but it's certainly something that we're aware of, and I know we have corresponded a lot with Western's Active Transportation Society, WATS, and are always willing to listen to any insight that they have on what their experiences are at Western and elsewhere, and what we might be able to do here.
Yeah, and it's conversations like this as well to kind of like massage it a little bit, hear from people, and figure out like, oh, maybe this is a bit of a trend where more folks are coming in with their folding bikes. Well, thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate your time. And it seems like there's still a lot more to talk about, but we only have 1 hour. So I'm going to try to move on to Nadia. I know she was worried about having enough time, and we really appreciate you making the time to be here to talk about some of the forthcoming developments on campus. It's always very exciting to hear about this kind of infrastructure being developed and invested in.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Nadia, I'll hand over the virtual mic to you now.
Perfect. Yeah. So you guys just wanted me to touch on what you would want to consider when you're taking your bike out of storage if you're not riding it through the winter, which, believe it or not, lots of people do. So we won't have time to go over what's called the M check in much detail, just due to time constraints. But it is something that if you want to buy a used bicycle, or if you're taking your bike out of storage, you really want to consider. It's something that any bicycle mechanic will do upon taking in your bicycle for any kind of tune-up or repair. So they'll go through these same points. You can see the M is sort of in blue there on the image I've put to the slide. But if you do a quick Google, you can find lots of resources that go over the M check. But really what you're looking for when you pull out your bike in the spring or early summer, whenever you start riding, is, do the wheels turn smoothly? Do the pedals turn smoothly? Is your chain moving along, or is it noisy? If it's noisy, that's a problem. Are the handlebars wobbling from the wheel, so they're not steering properly? Obviously, you want to make sure that your brakes work. Basically just making sure that there's nothing that's going to fall apart on you when you're riding, nothing that's going to get caught or fall off, like the chain. If the chain's in bad shape, it's the one place that you might see that. And then really, if any problems arise, that's your cue. When you're going through this check, and you see that something's wrong, that's your cue to go into either service, or if you have some skills yourself, you're welcome to do that. Sometimes, I don't want to say we discourage people from doing their own work. It's great to learn about maintaining your own bicycle, and there's lots of things that you can do yourself. And obviously, for financial reasons, lots of people choose to do that. But just be really mindful about what you're doing. You don't want to cause more problems in the process of trying to fix your own bike. So really take your time. That's really the trade-off, is it's either time or money, right? You either have the time to fix it yourself, to learn how to do it properly, kind of thing, or you can pay someone to do it. Something like a spring tune-up at London Bicycle Cafe is about $100. But if you're cost conscious, I know for us, we do a 15-minute bicycle intake as soon as the bicycle arrives in the store. So anybody who's concerned about, how much they want to spend, they can just say, you know what, can you tell me if there's anything quickly wrong with it? And we'll just service that part. And if that's more financially sound, then that's something that we can look at. One more thing on the M check that I forgot to mention that I should. One thing you really want to make sure of when you're bringing out your bicycle from any kind of storage is that the seat post can move, so that your seat height can go up and down. Typically, if they sit for a long time, they can seize, and then that can be a big problem, obviously, down the line if you end up needing to change it for any reason, or you're selling your bike or whatever. Aside from brakes working, wheels turning, and your handlebars is not loose or anything like that, that would be the other thing I think I would check for at a sort of spring spring check. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So some more things to consider, especially if you don't have a bike and you need to get one. Really want to consider the bicycle that you're looking at, whether it's used, whether it's new. Is it intended for what you're using it for? Are you buying a mountain bike with thick tires and suspension when you're really going to be only riding on paved trails? That's probably not the right bike for your use. Are you buying a skinny road bike, but you want to be going off-road? These are kinds of things that you want to refer to either online resources or friends or bike shops, just to kind of help guide you to the right thing. If you're going to ride in your work clothes, for example, you can focus on getting a city bike that has slimmer tires, fenders, as well as like a rack or a front basket to carry your stuff, that kind of thing. Sometimes you can make a bike that isn't really designed for your use. You can still make it work. I don't want to discourage people from riding a bicycle just because it's the wrong one. But eventually, you get, if you decide you like riding first, and then you can make that ride better. Whether that's by getting a bike that fits better, whether it's more suited to the uses that you're going to have, and that kind of thing. So yeah, you really want to consider your budget. And if you're buying used, really make sure you're either buying from somewhere that's going to do that M check for you and make sure that that bike is safe to ride, or really study up on it and go over it before you make a purchase, especially if you're purchasing from an individual like on Kijiji or whatever have you, that kind of thing. The other thing that I briefly touched on earlier was project 2529. I might have put the wrong numbers there. Sorry about that. And I swear it was 259. But it's a bike registry service. If you have a bicycle, it's highly recommended that you register it there. It basically tracks your ownership of it. You'll find a serial number anywhere on a bicycle. Typically you'll see it under between the pedals, basically, or somewhere along the frame. It'll be, if there isn't one, I would be kind of concerned that it may have been scratched off, might be a stolen bicycle. But what you can do too is to validate a used bicycle sale is just you can ask the person for that serial number to run it through, or ask them if they've run it through Project 259. Because if you find out that it's stolen, you probably want to alert the original owner, not buy it from someone else. And because that's what you'd want done for yourself, right? So when you get a bike, whether it's used or not, register it with Project 259 so that you can basically register it as stolen if that happens for any reason. And then, yeah, enjoy your ride, get comfy. I know you touched briefly on the Thames Valley Parkway. It does run through campus for that section by, I want to say, is it Elgin or Essex? It's just on the bridge. It's where the Thames Valley Parkway connects. There's the northern connection, and then you actually do have to sort of hit the side streets before you can get to Gibbons Park, but then you go through Banana Kingdom, which everybody loves, and then ride on into Gibbons Park and into downtown. And that's where London Bicycle Cafe's new location will be, close to, I believe, the new satellite location for Western downtown coming up. So that could be a convenient place for you to stop. We're going to have a cafe there as well. You can chat bicycles with people or get service, hopefully. So yeah. Questions? I went really fast.
Thank you so much, Nadia. I cannot wait for that new location to open. Did you say that it was mid-July, midsummer?
It's so hard to tell right now. You know, there have been delays for like HVAC units not being available, lots of different stuff. So I mean, as soon as possible,
Yeah.
you know, everything's getting filled in there. So, but it'll be a great place to stop and chat and meet other cyclists and ask them about their experiences and their routes. I do find community is the best way to find the safest bike routes, you know, because then you don't have to try them out yourself. You know, sort of what
Yeah.
feels comfortable for most people. So
Are you going to have a coffee shop in there? Like you currently have that espresso machines, like a little espresso.
Oh, yeah, the espresso machine at the current location is a dead horse, as it were. It's asleep. Let's put it that way. It's still a functional machine, but yeah, the cafe hasn't been operational since COVID hit. So
Yeah.
yeah, the new location is going to be big focus on the cafe. We have cafe manager Megan is going to be opening that up. There'll be some food offerings as well.
Oh, I'm so excited about that.
Yeah, so it's going to be nice, nice hub for relaxation and chatting bikes.
Yeah. I'll wait to see if there are any questions, but I also wanted to share, you talked about secondhand bikes, and only once I bought a bike secondhand. I was very nervous, but it was a Kijiji transaction. But the way that I did it, I actually met with the person at a bike shop and had like paid for like an assessment of the bike and like tuned it up while at it. And the person was able to be like, no, it's in really good shape. And I was like, okay, well, we'll tune it up while we're at it. And then that's where that transaction took place, just to make sure, because I don't really know that much about bikes except for how to ride one.
And that's okay. You don't have to learn how to ride your own bike. Oh, fix your own bike, I should say. The one thing I did want to mention specifically was at Squeaky Wheel. So for budget conscious folks, Squeaky Wheel takes in donations of parts and old bicycles and stuff. and we'll sell them at a really good cost, as well as offering some training. This Wednesday is actually the Women Trans Femme Night, specifically for that demographic. It, aims to create a safe environment where people can learn to fix their own bicycles, specifically anyone who falls under that women trans femme umbrella, so that they're not feeling there can be a fair bit of sexism in the bicycle industry. So in order to sort of relieve that pressure, this night has been created by CycleLink, I believe. So that is another resource that I would point people to, especially if they do want to learn.
And that's a regular kind of thing that they do. I follow them on Instagram, and I feel like they probably do it at least twice a year, maybe more frequently than that.
Yeah, it used to be more frequent, is my understanding. I think the end of each month, I want to say, is like the goal, especially during like summer and spring months. I don't know that I think COVID obviously like had a huge interruption to it. So I think there was only one in like 2021 and maybe one in 2020, if that. But I believe they're trying to start that up more regularly, so that that's a resource for people as well.
Awesome. Well, I don't see any questions in chat, or I don't see anybody with their hands up, but that doesn't mean that questions won't come up. So why don't we move on to Ashley? And I'll hand over the microphone to you. Just let me know when you want me to advance the slides, Ashley.
Perfect, thank you. My name is Ashley Hickey, and I am the outreach service, or one of the outreach services librarians for London Public Library. And I've just got some brief information on some of our digital collections that relate to bikes, cycling, and bike maintenance, as well as a little bit more community information. Okay, on the next slide. So London Public Library has quite a few digital collections that are available. The couple that I'm going to talk about are Libby and Hoopla. So Libby is a digital resource that allows you to check out ebooks, audiobooks, magazines, smart collections. You can place items on hold, and all items are automatically returned, so no late fees. And this includes a large selection of cycling and bike maintenance magazines. And all of these items can be downloaded for offline use as well. So you can use it on your smartphone, on your tablet, and all you have to do is download the Libby app. And you can see the little image there. And I'm also going to pop some links to all of these resources into the chat. So if you want to, you can follow along on the website. And there we go. So I've popped in some links to our Libby collection of magazines on cycling, our bike maintenance magazines that are available, as well as the link to Hoopla, which has a ton of materials. So I'm just going to speak on that one really quickly. Hoopla provides a large selection of ebooks, audiobooks, comics, movies, and TV shows, but it has an extensive selection of nonfiction books, including bike trails of the world, guides to urban cycling, histories of cycling, biographies of famous cyclists, cycling adventure books. It has a few fictions as well that have a cycling focus. So there's just a ton of material there. There's also materials on bike maintenance on Hoopla as well. What's great about Hoopla is it has unlimited borrows. So any of the materials and items you see on Hoopla are never going to be on hold or unavailable. They'll always be available, and you can check them out whenever you like. With Hoopla, you get 6 free borrows a month, and this ticks over the first of every month. Okay, and I'll just have you click on the next slide if I may. So we also have an extensive print collection. So we do have physical books that also have information on cycling and bike maintenance and bike repair. These are all available on our catalog. You can place them on hold and pick up these physical materials at any of the London Public Library branches, whichever one is close to you. So you really do have a large selection of materials, either digitally or physically in print, depending on what you're more comfortable with, and just a ton of material on urban cycling, and a ton of material on bike maintenance too. So again, maybe you're not familiar with how to do some of these spring checks. There is a ton of information online, and you can find a ton of information in print as well. that kind of guides you through the processes. So you can access all of the resources with your London Public Library card, or you can get an e-account. So you can sign up for a library card in person at any of our 16 branches, or you can sign up online for an e-account if you just want to use the digital materials. So the physical card gives you access to our print materials and digital, whereas the e-account just gives you access to all of our digital resources. But you can sign up for that free online right from our homepage at lpl.ca. And then I just wanted to briefly mention some other community resources that we offer and that are available in the City of London. So most of the LPL locations offer city bike maps. So these are the large printed 18 by 12 inch bike maps that have all of the information on trails and paths. You can pick those up in person at most of our branches. I do recommend calling your branch ahead of time and just making sure that they are fully stocked on those. But most of the branches do carry these bike maps that are available to take home. You can also find these bike maps on the City of London website, and I'm going to post that link in just a moment into the chat. And we also carry the city walking maps as well. The one last thing I wanted to mention is there is a large community event as well that's hosted usually in late spring or early summer, and it's called the Big Bike Giveaway. And this is a phenomenal community event, and it's hosted by a husband and wife couple who have been hosting it for many years. And I've just checked their site. Right now they're taking bike donations and partnering with more community organizations. And then soon in the late spring, they'll have some information on an actual date for when this event will happen. And you can show up to this event. I think for the past COVID years, it may have been registered online, but that information will be coming soon on their website. Otherwise, it's usually just a drop-in, first come, kind of first serve. And you can actually get a free bike that way. And they do make sure that all of the bikes are in good working order. So I'm just going to post the link to that, as well as to the cycling information from the City of London, because they have a ton of other information as well. They have more maps depending on exactly where in London you're looking for, that are a little bit more detailed than the larger bike maps. They also have information on the bike lockers. Currently, there was a pilot project in 2021 that was running to have bike lockers available. Currently, it's set to end in the end of July. However, I did talk to the City of London. They're hoping to extend it at least until August. These bike lockers are completely enclosed, and there are a few located throughout downtown London. So I'm just going to pop those links into the chat here. And I believe the bike walkers work for a fee. It's a very minimal fee, but there is one associated with those ones through the City of London. And there is an app. So if you go to that City of London /cycling, you can get the information for the app, and that'll let you access the bike lockers. And I think that is all the information I have from London Public Library.
Thank you so much, Ashley. There were a few pieces of information that I didn't know about it. So it was very helpful to have you walk through some of these resources and things that LPL does. Do people have any questions regarding what Ashley talked about? I love the idea of like building on the foundations that you already have and figuring out like what areas of investigation you want to pursue. So like for me, I love biking. I don't necessarily think of developing skills and like repairing my own bike, but then I want to understand more about like urban infrastructure and like maybe looking at examples of other cities building like interesting bike lanes or like problem solving in terms of like infrastructure to create more like bike and pedestrian friendly cities. So I'll definitely be checking out some of those resources that you talked about.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much for having me join you today.
Yeah, and I wanted to acknowledge too as well. I see there might be some comments in chat. Oh no, these were just comments that links that you popped. Sorry. I'm trying to keep my screen to a minimal since I'm the one who is recording. But I also wanted to flag it for you guys that we'll be sharing this recording on Western Library's YouTube channel to make sure that we reach as many different audiences as we can. And I also wanted to share with everybody who's here today that we have started thinking and talking about the fall. I know we haven't gotten to the summer yet, but I feel like planning things, especially if they're like bigger events, takes time. Western Libraries normally works very closely with London Public Library in terms of like cross promoting each other's services and promoting membership and doing like a bit of a card drive, which we haven't been able to do in the last few years because of COVID. So we're hoping that in the fall we could have you guys come in and like set up a booth to promote your services and collections and give out cards. And then Nadia and I also talked about the opportunity to have London Bike Cafe like come in with a bunch of bikes and do live demos and let people maybe try out different types of bikes. So this is kind of a dry run for some of those bigger conversations and activities that we hope to hold in the fall. Well, thank you everybody who was able to attend, and for all of our speakers, I really appreciate your time. And seeing that we don't have any more questions, let's adjourn our meeting at this point. Thanks, everybody.